It's spring break season, and on this week's Above the Tearline, we're going to look at travel and security risks over spring break in Mexico and how the cartel violence in Mexico impacts spring break. As the cartel wars have raged in Mexico, they've impacted not only the smuggling plazas along the U.S. border, towns like Reynosa, Nuevo Laredo, Tijuana, and of course Juarez, but they've also spread down to the ports because the incoming narcotics and, of course, precursor chemicals for making synthetic drugs like methamphetamines come in through the ports into Mexico, and therefore these ports are very important places for the cartels to control. They're critical real estate. As you look at the cartel map of Mexico, and you pay attention to these places and the ports along the coast, you notice that there are very few places along the coast that are not controlled by one or another of the cartels. And it's this struggle, this turmoil between these cartels that has resulted in the violence that we're seeing in some of these cities. We have seen an increase in gunfights, beheadings, kidnappings related to this cartel struggle in cities such as Acapulco and Mazatlan. In fact, we've seen cruise ships begin to cancel ports of call in these cities due to the danger presented by these gunfights. Of course, the violence in the north of Mexico, in places like Juarez and Monterrey, is bringing a lot of law enforcement and federal, especially law enforcement, attention. And so a lot of federal police and troops are located in these places, and that means that there has been a vacuum of security in other places. And this has given room to common street criminals. They now have less pressure from the authorities than they had before and more latitude to act. That means that we've seen an increase in things like armed robberies, kidnappings, assaults, and even express kidnappings. Those are short-term kidnappings where they will hold someone until the contents of their checking or savings account are depleted by use of an ATM card. The above-the-tearline aspect of this is that these principles really don't just apply to Mexico. In fact, we see people every year, even in the U.S., who are victimized by criminals when they're on spring break. And so a lot of the recommendations that we've made in our spring break report are also very pertinent to people taking spring break in the U.S., places like Florida or South Padre Island or even New Orleans. So really most of it revolves around practicing common sense security, being aware of one's surroundings, not getting totally inebriated to the point where you can't practice situational awareness, and other little tips, things like, not taking drinks from a stranger, not making yourself a tempting target by flashing large quantities of money or wearing expensive jewelry. These are all the common sense types of things that will keep you safe, whether you're in the U.S. or Mexico. Another critical point is that students really shouldn't venture outside alone, especially after dark. Being part of a group doesn't guarantee safety, but it certainly helps keep you from being victimized by criminals, and it does lessen the risk.